Good afternoon, everybody. We'll start today's session with a sound check.
Yep. Sound check. Ryan here. Can you hear us?
And Howard here.
Hello. Sound check. 1, 2, 3. All right, we got a couple of yeses.
Do we have a couple of thumbs up?
Yep. Eager
We're in
Krieger.
business?
There we go. Yep.
All right, we got a lot of ground to cover, Ryan. So let's get right into it. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Today we are going to be talking about selling to enterprise, professional services, and tips for DeFi projects that are looking to get to that point where they're engaging with professional services because the project is expanding, off the drawing board and starting to require certain skills and inputs and deliverables that, frankly, may not be consistent with the skill set of the team that actually came up with the idea. So we'll talk about defining professional services, and then we'll get into how you operate with one another. So before we begin, here's a disclaimer. Again, this covers for both on Federal Reserve and for CBIZ. The presentation's made as is. And our bios are available online. I'm Howard Krieger, Managing Director in Valuation at CBIZ, which is the 7th largest accounting firm in the U.S. Ryan, do you want to give a little bit of your background and then also talk about how you and I got together since it's relevant for professional services?
Yeah, sure. I'm CTO. I guess I call it founder and head of tech for Federal Reserve. I've been doing startups. I'm based in San Francisco. I've been involved in crypto a very long time. I've run teams doing PKI management, security for IoT devices, which quickly got me into this space at a much deeper level. So now I'm just running the technology and technology strategy side of Federal Reserve.
And you and I go back. You and I met because of professional services, right?
Correct. I was working for Concentric at the time, doing professional services for Bank of America, doing Wachovia Securities, and then we met through that network, and from
right.
there.
Yep. So let's talk about defining professional services. When we talk about professional services, we're generally speaking about outside, non-technical services that you need to consider engaging when launching a product or a project. They may be tax services, accounting, books and records, custody, HR, payroll, insurance, investment banking, advisory. Ryan, is there any other professional services you can think of that one might have to consider engaging outside of their core competency?
Yeah, I mean, for our project for Federal specifically, we have a development partner. I can go through that later in the presentation. Hiring, we had a boutique hiring agency through a good friend I've worked with at a hiring HR level for many years. So there's definitely some other things that added value right away from Federal Reserve.
Yeah, and the challenge is they add value, but time is the most valuable commodity. And as we talk about how professional services work, it's also a valuable commodity from their end too. And so a big theme throughout this presentation is going to be about organization, about creating, it's almost rote, it's a little bit boring, but something as simple as creating folders for each of the professional services you foresee yourself engaging goes a long way to being efficient in your interaction. And you're going to find when it comes to professional services, being efficient isn't only the highest ROI for you as a founder or as a project participant, but it's also the highest ROI because the less time the professional service person has to spend getting set up and prepping and solely focusing on execution, the more cost effective it's going to be also. So the first question is when do you pick up the phone? At what point do you need to bring in that professional service? The first thing I'll say is you need a rough roadmap of your own project. So you're a founder, you have this groundbreaking, earth-shattering idea that is going to change the world. And honestly, we hope, sincerely, Ryan and I hope that that's the case for everyone out here, that we're all here changing the world. Well, you need to have a good roadmap of what the next 6 to 12 months of build looks like, and start thinking about what outside services would be triggered as you move along. The simplest one might be something like, well, I intend to make money starting X. Well, if you make money, then the tax man cometh, and you need to be prepared. I don't care what jurisdiction you're working out of, to have your ducks in a row now, so that when you engage the tax professional later, you minimize the surprises and the work. So know your project's roadmap. Second part is know what you're good at. Ryan, I'm going to kick this to you. When you say know what you're good at and what you're not good at, what do you mean with respect to the project relative to professional services?
It's always good to gauge your own strengths and weaknesses, and to always be inventorying what you're good at, what you can improve on, and what you really don't know. So it's really awareness of that is at both an individual level, org chart level, and a company level. Yes. Writing it down and just getting it somewhere and always having it there keeps it out of your head. If you write it down, it's tangible, it's referenceable. You're not going to play games in your head, and you can kind of go back to it when you're saying, okay, where do we need the most thing? I'm okay at certain things. I'm not good at other things. I'm not good at marketing. I'm not good at social media marketing and being real chatty and sort of being doing presentations and and being more social. I'm an engineer. I like to sit in front of my computer. So knowing that I need folks to help get me to there, guide me in order to improve, so I can do talks like this and engage on Telegram and Discord and stuff like that. So
sure, and you're doing a fine job. So you're great at marketing.
Oh yeah.
So
thanks.
If anybody, but writing it down is key, right? Writing it down, leveraging your calendar, putting these flags up throughout your thinking through your future state to say, hey, you know what? I'm probably going to have to pick up the phone and talk to a professional service provider about X by Y date. So put those out there to get them out of your head. If you're going to capture anything from the next 20 minutes of our presentation, it's this next piece. Network in concentric circles outward. Your advisors, the people that you bring into the project at its early stage, should really be, it's all about trust and efficiency. So you think about your network, it's close relatives, then maybe distant relatives and close friends, going with the blood is thicker than water mantra, then acquaintances that you've met, and then finally cold. And you can have the same network set up for professional services too. Like, oh, I got, cousin Jane is an accountant. Let me call her and see what she knows about taxes. Or, Uncle Bob might be in human resources and he can help me out with it. And with a placement. And you really want to think about those folks and what they do and organize it, write it down. You have these different professional service categories that you're going to need: marketing, taxes, accounting, human resources. Put the names next to it and make it a point to keep in touch with them and set up time to regularly check in. So why do you work the network in order? One of the things to keep in mind is I've been a professional service provider for 10 plus years, starting with KPMG, being the head of a compliance and regulatory evaluation practice at a regional firm, and now being an MD, which is a partner equivalent at service provider. The key is I'm trying to be responsive. If you bring something up, my job is to not necessarily be the smartest, but I should know who is the smartest in the area you need help in. And I should also be acknowledging your issue. So before you're engaged with the professional service provider, they are going to use reliability in an attempt to gain trust. And at first, there's going to be this marketing aspect. As a professional service provider, I'll take the first couple of calls and talk through the issue, no problem. until we get to a point that we have a defined scope of whatever work's going to be completed. And at that point, you're going to be contracted and engaged, and the clock starts running. So contractors reserve a little bit for marketing, but at busier times of the year, and everybody's got seasonality, at busier times of the year, my ability as a professional service provider is going to be challenged by making sure I address the people that are paying first. So if you think about evaluation, this time of year is really critical because it's tax and year-end accounting season. So I am more apt to respond to, say, the client need than, say, the prospect that comes in and says, hey, I need evaluation for X, Y, and Z purposes this summer. All aspects of hiring and professional services act similarly. Human resources, you name it. So let me give an example of what the interaction with a typical service provider would be. I put up here custody services. Ryan, if you want to pivot off of custody services as a professional service and talk about your experience as a founder at Unfederal Reserve and who you engaged, how you engaged them, and the end result. I think you were going to do marketing or human resources.
I think we'll do. I mean, human resources was the most straightforward example. My network in San Francisco for various types of talent is pretty strong in engineering. I identified I'm weak in marketing hiring. I'm weak in sort of public relations, sort of that aspect. And you always need a bigger engineering network for hiring because good engineers are hard to find. So we had a friend I'd worked with and closely doing recruiting in the past. She has a boutique recruiting agency. And so I pinged her, and she was able to find a great marketing. She was finding a great marketing sort of person, and then she has in for other people. Another friend who's in San Francisco referred a marketing person that he's worked with for 10 years. So right then, I just got through almost 3 to 5 hours of vetting, going back and forth, and building a trust where they trusted me. More important, just as important as me trusting them, is like, okay, this is a known entity. The process goes much faster, and I'd say in a startup, application of resources and being strategic about it is probably one of the most important things for startup execution. I've seen it kill a couple of my startups and have been successful because I feel we applied our limited resources in the most strategic, cost-efficient way. My couple failures have been a couple missteps. And then I've seen other people fail because they didn't quite know the person. They didn't quite know the relationship. They weren't vetted. And so the risk of them failing at their job or failing in the professional service you're offering went way up, and they completely failed, and it really derailed what the startup was trying to accomplish. So super important.
And I was going to say, that's a really good point, is that the kind of the inverse of, you get what you pay for with professional services a lot of times. So the challenge is that if you go for the cold, right? If I flip back a couple of slides and we say, look at number 4 here, cold, right? If you go to cold, you can pay the money to like believe me, Ernst & Young, KPMG, the big insurance houses that you might need insurance for your platform. They'll take your money and they'll serve you to the extent that you've paid them. But again, you have all the challenges of the you don't know if you really have a true advocate. But the inverse is, if you go with your close relatives and your network, well, then, are they going to take liberties with providing you the best service possible? And I think you bring up a valid point that you need to establish ground rules with whoever your professional service provider is up front regarding expectations. Like, I don't care if I'm sitting around the table with you at Thanksgiving. When I call you, you need to pick up the phone, right? Like you need to work for me. That's a really great point. And so I think one of the other things to think about is think about parallels. Like you talked about some of the challenges and the fails in the past that, well, in every case, you are paralleling needs that come up in other industries. Like when you should never think for a moment as a founder in a cutting edge industry that there is not a parallel out there that you can leverage to find the professional service you need. So here, where we have custody services up on the slide, I think about my background with professional custody and escrow providers on the consumer and commercial lending side. You know, there are these parties that act as you know, safe houses, if you will, for materials, docs, monies, you name it. And the function they perform being this independent holder of stuff that have rules that they need to follow, those rules are part and parcel the rules that custody services providers in the blockchain space have to follow. So if you need a professional service and you can't, and you're stuck because you're like, where am I going to find a blockchain engineer? Well, don't necessarily look for a blockchain engineer. Look for, you know, a human resources support provider, a recruiter that has quals in finding, you know, blockchain technologists.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, right. And another example is our development partner, Web Develop. Vlad's the CEO. I worked with him before. We worked in San Francisco. We shared the same office. We went to crypto events, and then eventually he had a team in Ukraine. He's managing a team of really smart engineers that I've known worked on projects he's worked on, and everyone at the other end was super happy. They're like, it's very sophisticated data platforms, blockchain. So knowing him, it was pretty easy. He's like, hey, Vlad, do you have availability? And we're like, okay. And so a partnership formed, and I can't say enough about getting professional sort of, we call it development consulting, and he's able to apply resources for website fixes. We need to do website cleanup. We're able to do that. And I know it's going to have high quality. Me and him already know how to communicate. It just really reduced friction of the whole process. And anytime you
makes it more efficient
anywhere in your company is pretty much a signal that you're headed down the right track.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So who do you call? You know, here's an example, right? You call because you have to. One of the things that's critical with professional service providers is you might work your network and your circle as you start putting those flags out there and writing those notes and being like, do I need a lawyer? Do I need insurance? Do I need development services? Let me have those kind of, you know, critical conversations and see. But there's always that critical point where all of a sudden, okay, now we need help. So you decide to engage a provider. Who do you go with? Pick someone you don't know to keep independent. That's kind of a question, right? Because if you go with Cousin Jane, she's really not going to be independent. So of you and your interests. So are you going to be getting the type of service you need? One of our legal advisors, Melissa, she or rather I was going to say Unfederal Reserve's legal advisor, she introduced you guys to, or she introduced the Federal Reserve to a bunch of different law firm options. And I remember sitting in on those conversations and hearing certain law firms really challenge concepts in the space, like typical crypto challenges, right?
Yep.
And the feedback Melissa gave was, you know, you might want to go with the person that doesn't agree with you, right? You might want to go instinctively with the person that's going to challenge you. But the reality is that when you need that professional service provider, are they going to be there to support you? So when I think about my role as a professional service provider or any of the colleagues at CBiz, you know, when you're talking to those folks, it's important that you want an advocate. You want someone that you can respect their knowledge and their quals, but when it comes down to brass tacks, you don't want the person filing your taxes to be someone that challenges the efficacy of your numbers, right? Same thing with legal. You don't want to go with a legal provider that's going to challenge you per se. You want someone that's going to be an advocate. Trust is especially important. Now, the good, fast, cheap, Ryan. You know, give us an idea of, because that applies to professional service providers too, right?
Right. Yeah, and when we're doing engineering, trying to make decisions, a simple way to reason about and make decisions and think about things. This has been always good from an engineering QA standpoint is, okay, we have product, we have this sort of roadmap laid out to us. We have objectives. At some point, we need to say there's trade-offs, and how clearly do the most effective thing in the past to communicate these trade-offs to business folks, product folks. So, okay, you've laid out something. Do you want good, fast, or cheap based on your business objectives? Pick two is a good sort of thing. You can try to play the middle ground and do good, fast, cheap, and kind of all of them. Most people say all of them,
right?
And they say, well, can't we just do all of them a little bit? But in the end, you really got to get folks to think: do you want it good, fast, or cheap?
You get two,
and it helps them to at least give you a general direction. We want it fast. We want it cheap. We're a startup, or we're not. We're well funded, so we want it good. We want it good, fast, and cheap. They'll be like,
and when you're doing that planning,
right? If you have money and you add 20 engineers, is that going to get you there faster? It's really, it gives a good way to think about it, and it can apply well to other types of professional services.
Right. In some cases, you can't get it fast. Like if you think about like let's say you're talking with investment banking advisory, and they're structuring a deal. Doesn't matter how much you pay, you're not going to get it. Or maybe you could get it if you pay enough. But that is something. And then the other thing too is refer to those documents. So like if you leave this call today as a founder and you're like, okay, Howard and Ryan inspired me. I'm going to look at my roadmap and kind of figure out where I'm going to need professional services. You set up those docs, take those notes. When you talk to Jane or Bob, take that down, list out your potential providers, keep farming for those providers. You know what I mean? Like, don't let your Rolodex stop because someone says, hey, you know what? This project uses X custodian. You don't need to look anymore. No way. You need to, it's just like hiring a general contractor for your house. You need to have a couple of 3 options to make sure that you are picking the one that both suits you emotionally, right? Like fits your interest in the project, fits your budget, fits your sense of urgency, and culturally, meets the need. So, with that, Ryan, I put a slide in here, and you provided some of the professional services that Unfed has some level of engagement with, even if it's fairly early on.
Yep.
So if you'd like, go ahead and go through those quickly, and then we'll get to questions.
Yeah, sure. From an outsourced CFO, KPMG, because of our relationships at Unfederal, there's a lot of this relationship building has been going on for years. Sometimes it started as we started the original project where we were kind of pitching some of these, we were pitching exchanges, offering services, feeling out the market, trying to find product market fit. So we actually built a lot of these relationships. I think the banking one has been a really important one. It was a relationship that's sort of grown over time, and it's going to be, banks don't move fast, right? It's kind of like, this isn't one you're gonna move through a roadmap fast, but you're available. You pitch them, you keep them updated, you see where they're going, you offer help from a technology standpoint in general. Give them an ear, and so we're really happy about that. The legal, top of the industry, following the industry, following T0. Who's the legal representation of T0? Like who's having to interact with the government level, and then reaching out to them. So not being scared and going through the fear of, I'm not big enough, I'm not important enough, but you still reach out and say what you need and see if they lean in or not. And you'll be surprised that folks will lean in to a point, and because they want to tee up down the road potentially as the project gets bigger, as it grows.
Sure.
So. Hey,
and Ryan, I'm going to stop sharing my screen right now, so that because that's the end of the presentation, and I hope. Let's see.
I don't see any questions in the question area, and I don't see any questions in the chat. I see a general comment about your dress attire and some shout out to your dress attire, which is nice. I don't know if you want to answer the question where you get that.
I'll tell you this. I always try to rock the polo. The sweater runs from fall to early springtime. And I just feel more comfortable. I feel like when you're in a collared shirt, it's like the uniform, like I'm getting it done today. Yeah. And when I do wear t-shirts, but it's generally after hours.
And professional services, it helps to play the part, right? Even at home.
That's exactly right. Being a professional service provider is about building trust. We always tout trying to become, you're trying to be a trusted advisor. And body language, nonverbal communication is 80%, right? It's 80% nonverbal. And I think it's important to remember that.
I see a question about a chain link, but I don't want to talk about, I want to relate it directly to this topic. In this space, things are moving fast. Who should you partner with? You can't look at the entire scope of the DeFi market on federal. It's just too big, moving fast. So that's why you have a community. I think a lot of our community members are really great. We ask a question, hey, how about this? How about this? Folks like Chainlink and whatnot. We have a lot of community members recommending folks that they've worked with or they're ambassadors for. They've got us in front of the right people as fast as possible and said, hey, I look at this project. I've been participating. You should talk to these guys. And therefore, a really meaningful first meeting takes place. So I wanted to give a shout out to the community. I don't want to talk specifically about partnerships and all that, but I wanted to relate it to this topic.
Yeah.
So
well, it's like the 4 circles
helping us. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. It's your 4 circles, right? And then on DeFi projects, and that is something unique, right? And forgive me when we talked about the slides, we thought about the concentric circles of the network, but the community can be a huge source for who to go to, right? Like, I know that there are members of the community that have reached out to you in the past and been like, hey, I'm using so-and-so for legal. You should talk to them also.
Yep, gotcha. And I see some other questions, and I can definitely relate it to the topic. Exchange vetting. We at Federal, we had been talking to exchanges on the other side. We're like, oh, we were doing product market fit, last year. Like, hey, do you want an IRA? Do you want to put Bitcoin in your IRA for exchanges? We were like, hey, putting together some offerings to tease product market fit with exchanges, what their needs were, what do they do with lending. So we flipped that. And so a lot of the sort of tier 1 exchanges and whatnot, we've already kind of known from the other side. So they moved into our kind of middle part, I guess number 3. It's like we knew them at a professional level and they knew about us. So when we come and do our tier 1 vetting, that's kind of, it really helped kind of flush it out. And then again, we ask community members, we have a list of, oh, this exchange is good, this is not, So all of that feedback comes into sort of how we're going to strategically figure out how to move forward and build meet our market needs. So.
Well, that's the key, is you're building a team. And I think when it comes to professional services is don't be scared to reach out. At the end of the day, every one of those industries is they're trying to make a buck, but B, they also love what they do. So if they'll give you that free bandwidth for you to do with what you need. So thank you all for attending the session. Ryan, do you have another you want to hit it?
I see a question about the developer. I elaborate that on the how we found our development partner. It's Vlad. He's the CEO of Web Develop. I worked with him personally. I've known projects that he was working on with his guys that are working as part of Unfed. He's our development partner. We've worked together. We've communicated on highly technical things before. We have a great rapport. We went to crypto events. So we have a team of, we have 6 right now across the board. We're probably going to onboard a couple more to tighten up other areas in the marketing department and website and whatnot to tee up sort of the loose ends to create a clean marketing image for the company.
Yeah. Well.
All right, guys. We're actually out of time right now.
Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. We're going to do our last
Macros 2021.
Thank you.
So long.